Hello, and welcome back to Tranquility du Jour, nourishing conversations about living a full and meaningful life with doses of tranquility. I'm your host, Kimberly Wilson, delighted to be here with you today and bringing you today's episode. So in today's episode, I'm chatting with bestselling author Christine Lewicki about her book, I Quit Complaining. So you're going to learn about her challenge to stop complaining for 21 days, the lessons she learned with this challenge, and how this may make a difference in your own life. Like, who knew how often we complain? I think it's really interesting just to notice, like when you run into people on the street or someone you haven't seen in a while, it's like, oh, the weather, or, whatever it is. It's like, what would it take to actually shift that a bit? So I think you're going to really enjoy today's episode. I also want to say a big thank you to those of you who came out to support the mid-year virtual retreat that happened on Saturday. So this is the second time I've done a mid-year retreat, and I really find it to be quite special, similar to the very beginning of the year when we're just filled with ideas and intentions, and it's nice to take the pause and then look back on how has that been going? So if you're interested in getting the replay and purchasing the replay, just reach out to me and I'd be happy to send you the information. It was 3 hours and it was really just a beautiful experience. And one thing that I really took away from it is just how powerful it is to hit the pause button and spend a little bit of time nourishing the body. Obviously, so important, right? And also reflecting. We talked about the 10 types of wellness, and I've got a video coming out on that shortly, and really honed in on, okay, which type of wellness do I want to focus on throughout the rest of the year, or even over this next week or this next quarter. So again, a big thank you for joining me. And also wanted to let you know, thanks to your support, donated $1,000 to Pigs and Pugs Project. And I am still figuring out, I have my eye on a pig sanctuary and a pug rescue who it will go to. And I'm just finalizing it with the board. And once that is final, I will be sure to announce it and let everyone know. So thank you again so much for your support of our mission to make the lives of pigs and pugs happier and healthier. Also, a reminder, hit the subscribe button in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. And if you have a moment to head on over to KimberlyWilson.com/podcast, you will find information on leaving a review of the podcast. I'd be so grateful if you took the time to do that. It would mean a lot to me. And I love hearing how the podcast has affected you over these years. My gosh, is it 6? I think it's 16 years now. And then also how, what favorite episode you might have or what you've taken away from it, how it's made a difference in your life. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me and or hit that subscribe button and or leave a review. Would be so grateful. And a big welcome to anyone who is new to Tranquility du Jour. There is a link to learn more about the 5 tenets that shape the work of Tranquility du Jour, and also to learn more about the manifesto and all sorts of fun stuff. So would love to welcome you, and you can find more at KimberlyWilson.com/new. Also, I want to say a big thank you to those of you who have let me know that you enjoyed the podcasts on the road, part 1, 2, and 3 that I did with my partner, Tim. And of course, we recorded the last one shortly after we had pulled back into the area. And so, we're still in that moment, we were still kind of like, what are our takeaways? What are our lessons learned? And so what we're going to do is I'm going to do one more podcast on the road, part 4, which will be coming next week. Well, we'll talk about kind of takeaways and answer any other questions you all may have. So please don't hesitate to send those over to me. hello@KimberlyWilson.com. And again, for those of you not familiar, we took 5.5 weeks and worked remotely, traveling from Washington, D.C. to Oklahoma to drop off one of our 3 pugs at Camp Grandparents, and then on up to Seattle, Portland, Oakland, and Point Arena, which is a tiny town on the coast, and then back to Oklahoma and then D.C. So 5.5 weeks and just a really delightful experience that I shared a lot of photos over in Instagram stories, but also you can find them on my blog, KimberlyWilson.com/blog. Again, if you have any questions, please let us know. So what is around the corner? So this year, there's just a few things left, actually. I've got the TDJ Lifestyle e-course that'll be launching in the fall, kind of back to school time. It's a 5-week course that touches on the 5 tenets of Tranquility du Jour, which is wellness, creativity, compassion, mindfulness, and style. All right. And you can join the waitlist. You can find a link to that in the show notes. And then also the TDJ Passholder Collective, which, my goodness, together we've done probably closer to 35 events during the year. So rather than signing up for things a la carte, you get everything and more. So you can find a link to that also in the show notes and join the waitlist. And then the next TDJ Live will be happening in September and the next virtual retreat in October. And that will be it for 2021. All right, so without further ado, Christine Lewicki is a best-selling author and certified leadership coach living between Paris and LA. Particularly known as a sought-after speaker who loves to express herself with the heart and guts. She's brilliant and inspiring everyone to get out of victim mode and share their best self with the world. She wrote the French bestseller, I Quit Complaining, translated in many languages and now available in English. She's also a wife and mother of 3 kick-ass girls, always striving to live her busy and rich life to its fullest. Welcome, Christine.
Welcome, Kimberly.
So it's such a treat to have you on the show, and I am excited to talk about your book, I Quit Complaining. And I'm curious, it's like, what led you to write this particular book, which I think is such a good idea, because isn't it funny how it's almost like the small talk is complaining, right? About weather or the pandemic, which, is complain worthy, but it's like, it is interesting, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, I have to say that most of the time when we complain, it is somewhat complain worthy. And it's not about that. It's not about, do I have the right to complain this time or not? It's more about who's paying the cost of my complaining. And most of the time we are. Like, if I'm complaining, I'm the one really impacted by my complaining more than anybody else. And so that was my insight. So I'm going to try to make this story short, but I was a coach, and I was a newbie coach, and I was helping people, really create the life they want and being empowered and, looking at solutions instead of looking at problems. So I was in my coaching mode with my clients. And then one day I came home, and at the time I had 3 young daughters. Now they're teenagers, but at the time they were young. And I came home and I dealt, with all the drama of having young kids and trying to feed them and give them a bath and putting them to bed and all of this. And so after all of this was over at the end of the day, and I had my whole day of working all day, right? I went to work, I did all of that. And they finally were sleeping, and I crashed into my bed, and I really had this thought that I just had a terrible day. I was just like, finally they're asleep. It felt like finally my day could begin, like my own space to feel good. It could finally begin, except it was like almost 10 p.m. And in that moment, I remember having this aha moment and saying to myself, Christine, that terrible day is actually a normal day of your life. And nothing really bad happened today. There was no car accident, nobody's sick, and you didn't have any problem with your Wi-Fi. Like, everything is fine. And so in that time, that night on my bed, I had 2 realizations. One was like, I don't want to go to bed feeling like this every day. This is my normal life. I call this my not always very sexy life, because that's what it is. There is what you post on Instagram. There is, the time you go to the beach, or you have a massage, or you go and you see a beautiful waterfall, right? But the rest of life quite often is, the fridge is disgusting and the dishes are piling up and I don't know what we're going to eat. And I wish I had more money in my bank account. And so that could be our reality. But yet in my bed, I was like, no, but there is a lot of things that are great in my life. Yes, I have all those reasons to complain, or all those reasons to feel that it was a terrible day. But I want to see all the other reasons why my life is beautiful and why I have in so many areas, life is meeting my expectation. In so many areas, I have a good life. So I had this aha moment where I was like, I need to learn to turn a different light on my day. And then the other realization was like, wow, I'm no better than my clients. Like I've been coaching people to have them, be empowered and look at solution and look at the bright side. Yet me at home as a mother, I was struggling to do that. And so I was like, and now that I knew that I was myself caught into that mode, I was like, I cannot really preach anything to my client until I do my own work. So long story short, I decided to do a 21-day challenge to quit complaining. And I put a bracelet on my wrist. And every time I was complaining, I had to switch the bracelet from one side to the other and begin again. So the goal was to do 21 consecutive days with the bracelet on the same side. So it took me 4 months to do my 21-day challenge. And the story is that I started a blog, and every day I was sharing what I was learning. And the blog went viral and gave birth to a book called I Quit Complaining. And we sold 300,000 copies of that book. It became a big bestseller. So that's my short answer to your first question.
I love it though. And I love that it wasn't like, oh, I'm complaining. Okay, well, just keep going. It was like, nope, got to start all over. That's such a great idea. Now, why? Well, let's define what is complaining, because I'm curious, when you say complaining, is it like giving voice to complaining, or is it even internally complaining?
Yeah. So that's a very good question that I actually literally asked myself on day one. On day one, I was like, okay, how do I know if I need to switch my bracelet from one side to another? So initially, I had this dream that I could control my thoughts and that I could actually not complain in my head. But after a while, I was like, this is not very realistic. Like it's very hard to control your thoughts. But in my head, I was like, yeah, but it would be nice to not complain in my head, right? That's really where I feel also there is a big part of my pollution. I call this my pollution. But I said, it's going to be too challenging and expecting too much of me to think that I can actually control my thoughts. So the rule was that I had to switch my bracelet every time I was speaking my complaining. And what I've learned, which is beautiful, is that what's happening is that when you speak your complaining, you make it real. First, you make it real for yourself because you start to believe what you say. And then you make it real for the other people around you because they're part of this interaction with you where you're complaining. Whereas if I don't voice my complaint, then it's kind of easier to kind of move on to something else. It does not I don't get attached to it. I think it's Byron Katie who's doing The Work. I don't know if you heard of The Work by Byron Katie. Yeah. So that's what she's saying. She's saying the problem is not our thoughts. The problem is when we get attached to them. So that was my inspiration, was like, okay, I might be complaining in my head, but I'm not going to be attached to them. And so I'm not going to voice my complaining. And then they're going to move on. And what I've learned is that even though I was allowed to complain in my head, day after day after day, those complaining in my head had no place to be or to go. So they kind of stopped coming.
Yeah, interesting. It's because you're right. Controlling thoughts is quite hard. There's, ways to work with our thoughts, right? But to control them, they just pop up. And then you'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to switch my bracelet again, Yeah.
So I realized I didn't answer the second part of your question, which is how do I know if I'm complaining? So
yes.
One thing is, okay, so first I have to speak it. I have to say something. And then I came up with three criteria that I would use to define. And first of all, you are your own judge. If people want to do this challenge after listening to this podcast, I always tell them, I don't set the rules, you do. It's your life and you get to decide the rules of your own challenge because you know more than anybody what's going to help you improve your life, right? So for me, when I was doing the challenge, I was like, okay, what are going to be my rules so that I know when I need to change my bracelet? So one criteria was the tone of my voice, right? Do I speak and it's like sour, bitter? Am I whining? Am I, screaming? Like what is the tone of my voice? It was one way to define if I was complaining or not. The second one, and this is the most obvious, right? It's the one we think, when we think about complaining, we think about immediately we have an idea of a tone of voice. The second one, which was such an eye-opener, was my positioning. And it was like, am I playing the game of who's right and who's wrong? Am I more interested in being right than finding a solution? Or am I pointing fingers? I discovered that I loved every time something went wrong, my first reaction was like, whose fault it is, who's guilty, right? And I realized that I love pointing fingers. It would make me feel that I exist or something. I don't know exactly what it was, but I was like, oh, as soon as something went wrong or I was kind of upset or feeling something that I didn't like in my body, then I would point fingers and be like, whose fault it is. And so that would be a criteria. If I'm playing that game of who's right and who's wrong, or if I'm pointing fingers, and usually, it's like your fault and I'm the victim, because it's kind of nice to be the victim. You don't have much to do, right? If I'm your victim, then you have to change. I don't have to do anything. It's all on you to improve my life, right? But then what I've learned is that actually you're guilty, and then I'm victim, and then I don't have any power over my life anymore, because I put it all on you to change or to do what I want you to do, or to do what I expect you to do for me to be happy. And so I realized that if I stop pointing fingers, then I could be free. Because as soon as I point fingers, I'm stuck. I'm a victim of you. So to me, that was like, oh my God. And what I realized, if you pay attention around you, and it's way easier to hear when other people do it than when you do, by the way. It's way easier to know when people complain or when people do that. But look around and listen, and you'll see that we play that game of who's right and who's wrong all day long. As a society, we love playing that game, except we're not free in that game. Nobody's free. So that was the second criteria, my positioning. Am I playing this game of right and wrong, victim, guilty? And the last one was the accuracy of my words. I realized that very often when I was complaining, first of all, I really wanted to be heard because something was not working for me. I was upset or frustrated. And so I really wanted to be heard. But part of me was not sure I could be heard. So I would turn the problem into a drama. I would generalize it, make it bigger. I would say it's always the same. You never help me. I do everything alone. I told you 100 times. So I would exaggerate, amplify, and turn the problem into a drama, right? The problem with that is that when you do that with people, you lose your integrity. They don't believe you anymore. It's like, crying wolf when there is no wolf. It's like if you turn every problem into a drama, people are like, they know you're not telling the truth. Like if you say, I told you 100 times, they know it's not true. Maybe you told them 20 times, but then they don't listen to you. So those were my three way of defining, paying attention to the tone of my voice, to my position. Am I playing this game, this power game, and also the accuracy of my communication? Am I describing the problem for what it is? Or am I, putting a lot of baggage around it?
Magnifying it, right? Catastrophizing it. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, it's so funny, your second piece, about positioning, because it's like, I remember years ago reading this one sentence that really stuck with me. And it's like, do you want to be right or do you want to be kind? And I was like, oh, because I love being right. I'm like you. I like to okay, well, where was the breakdown here? Okay, well, how can we prevent this from happening in the future? It's like, oh, was I not clear enough when I made this appointment with the, tech person to come and fix something? And, they got the times wrong. Well, how could I have been more clear? Things along those lines. And then you're just like, oh my gosh, just move on, right? Just reschedule them and move on. But it's interesting that is, it is somewhat universal because we do love to blame.
Yeah, sometime like if I'm having an interaction with somebody in my team or with one of my child around something that didn't go the way I wanted, I can catch myself being like, are you more interested in finding a solution or are you more interested in being right? And the true answer is that very often what I really want is I want an answer. I want a solution, but first I want to be right. But the problem with that, okay, so that's something else. And you tell me if you want to stop me and bring the conversation in another direction. But what I've learned is that every time I'm trying to be right, what does it mean? It means that I'm making the other person wrong. And what I've learned is that as soon as the other person is feeling made wrong, they don't want to cooperate anymore. They don't want to listen to you. They want to fight or they want to flight, right? They want to run away from you because nobody wants to be wrong. I don't know about you, but if somebody comes to me, whether it's my husband or somebody in my team or anybody, and makes me wrong, I want to walk away from them. By the way, teenagers do that very well, right? We make them wrong a lot and they slam the door because they're not interested in being wrong. And it's normal. None of us wants to be wrong. So either I want to walk away from you or I'm going to fight and I'm going to justify why, because most of the time when something is not going, like most of the time when somebody is not doing what I expect them of them, or if I'm not doing what someone else is expecting of me, most of the time, we don't do it on purpose. We have good reasons. We have some reason. The question is, who has better reason? And then we go into that fight, right? But it's just like most of the time we have reasons why we were not able to meet someone else's expectations. So then we go in a fight of who's right and who's wrong. And then all the attention is on that instead of really looking at what happened. And we're not interested in, like quite often I have to stop myself and say, you know what? I don't care whose fault it is. Like, I don't want this to be part of this conversation. I don't want to know whose fault it is. I want to understand what happened so that we can have all the elements to create something that's going to work next time. And only if I can really hear and understand, and if we can all hear and understand what went wrong, and we're willing to open that door of really looking without judging and creating safety for everybody to express how come we were not able to meet the deadline or whatever, the expectation, then we can come up with a different solution. And that solution, I'm not saying this solution is going to necessarily always work, but has way more chances of working for sure.
Well, I'm curious too, did your family notice that you weren't complaining, or did you share with them that you were going through this challenge? Did you try to bring them on board? I'm just curious how this kind of played out in your microcosm.
Okay, so I did announce to my family that I was going to do the 21-day challenge to quit complaining. And it's funny, I remember very clearly my 3 daughters were going down the stairs and I stopped them and I said, I have something to announce. I have an announcement and I'm going to do 21 days without complaining. And I could see a smile on their face. And because their first reaction was, oh, then we can do whatever we want. And I was like, no, that's absolutely not what the challenge is about. Because if that was one of my big lessons of this challenge, is that if it's about you doing whatever you want and me not complaining about it, I'm not going to last 21 days. There is no way I'm going to last 21 days. I'm going to last 2 days. I can put my rose-colored glasses and pretend that I don't care that my kitchen is a mess, that I don't care that it's late and nobody's in bed, that I don't care that I have too many emails, or I don't know, that I'm late for a meeting. I can put my rose-colored glasses, but it's not going to last very long, right? Eventually, reality is going to come back. And so this challenge is not about pretending that we're in la la land and that, everything is happy. This challenge is about, I'm going to look at my life and I'm going to change what I can change to improve my life. And I'm going to let go of what I cannot change. And there is that famous quote from Maya Angelou. She said, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Don't complain. And so that's what I did. The first day of my challenge. So first of all, the very first day of my challenge, I got out of bed. And I remember very clearly, I stood up and I was like, okay, Christine, today, no matter what's going to happen. And in my head, I paused and I was like, and shit is going to happen. Because that's also, that in itself was a lesson, is that I think in the past, I was expecting when I was waking up that everything would go my way. Like for some reason, I was expecting in a way that I had my own long to-do list of things I wanted to accomplish, and I was expecting to accomplish it, and I was expecting my kids and everybody to help me with it. But that's not reality. The reality is that we have expectation, and it's great that we do, and it's great that we're committed to have expectation, but then things get in the way. And so, and to do the 21-day challenge to quit complaining, it means to embrace that, to be okay with that. Like, I'm going to stay committed to my goals and to my visions, but I'm also going to accept that not everything is going to work out the way I wish they would. And I'm going to embrace the reality of things. And I'm not going to be so offended or upset when things don't go the way I want, right? I'm just going to accept that it's part of life. So in the morning, I would wake up and say, Christine, today, no matter what's going to happen, and I knew that shit was going to happen, complaining is not an option. Like, no matter what's going to happen, complaining is not an option. So it's like I closed that door. It's like, when you go on the freeway and the ramp is closed, like you're trying to travel and you're about to get on the freeway and the ramp is closed. Well, it's like, okay, that's not an option. The freeway is not an option. The freeway of complaining to deal with my not always very sexy life and everything that's going to get in the way. This is not an option anymore. And only when I closed that door was I able to access the other options. What else can I do? What else can I do when I get home and the kitchen table is a mess? What else can I do when my back is hurting and I'm tired? What else can I do when, I don't have enough money on my bank account? What else can I do when I realize that somebody in my team didn't do something right or made a mistake? What are my other options? The ramp, the door of complaining is closed. So just that is, and there is so many other options, but they're not as accessible. Like if you want to travel from one town to another, we're so used to get on the freeway. If the freeway is closed, it's going to take more energy to figure out the other routes. Right. But those other routes are way more fulfilling and way more rich. And that's what a lot of people who are doing the challenge to 21 Day to Quit Complaining, they say, oh my God, I feel that I'm getting a handle of my life. Like, it's like I was on the freeway of going through the motion and complaining, but now I actually have access to what can I do? What can I do about my life? What can I change? When is it that I need to change? When is it that I need to let go? When is it that I need to change my attitude? When is it that I change the way I communicate my needs? So a lot of options are coming up when the door of complaining is closed.
Yeah, I think that's such a great reminder, right, of looking at all the different options that are out there. And, the idea, right, of carving a new neuro pathway rather than going down the complain, blame route. It's like, okay, what do I have control over? How can I react differently to this, et cetera, et cetera? Will you share one lesson that you learned during this experiment that you have found to be particularly powerful?
Can I share two? One is, I already talked a little bit about it. The first one is, if I don't like something, change it. And I realized before that I would be like, I don't like something, who's guilty, whose fault it is. Like my initial reaction was like, I don't like something, whose fault it is. And when that door was closed, I was like, okay, maybe other people have some things that they can do to improve my life. But what is it? Maybe I also have some things that I can do. Maybe I have some ways that I can influence my own life. So, for example, I started to wake up earlier so that I would have more time for myself before waking up my kids. Or I tried to organize my house differently or organize my work differently. But really take full responsibility for my own life. Because when we complain, I already said that earlier, we actually give away our power to all those people who are guilty at making us miserable. So the first lesson was like, I'm actually responsible for my life. And yes, all those people could do a lot of things to make my life better, but am I doing all the things that I can do to make my own life better? So that was like one of the big lessons. The other one that was more like at the end of my challenge, that I realized that a lot of time I was complaining because I was just exhausted. And I had spent my entire day dealing with other people's expectation and needs. And, and I think it's very true for women. We tend to, care for our family, our spouse, children's, our boss, clients, neighbors, teachers. We care for so many people and we forget to care for ourselves. And to me, the image that I had was the image of if you have dry skin and you don't take care of it, in the end, no matter what you put on it, it's going to stink. Even if it's just water, if you have very dry skin and you don't take care of it, even when you put water on it, it hurts. And I realized that in my life, sometimes that's what it was. It was just like I was so not taking care of myself that I would get triggered all the time by, like a pair of socks on the floor would be such an aggression for me. Oh my God, I can't believe my husband left his socks on the floor. But it was not about the socks. It was the fact that I was sacrificing my life to take care for all of those people. And I was sick and tired of it. So what I realized that if I wanted to quit complaining, I had to give myself permission to do what feels good. I had to give myself permission to take my dance class on a weekday during my work hours. I mean, I was my own boss, so I could do that. But I had to take the day off and take a walk in silence in nature. I had to really put myself first and have those moments where I feel that my life is good. That I feel that I'm actually doing what I want and what makes me happy. And so that's when I decided to go to my dance class, for example, every Sunday morning. And initially I would feel guilty because I was like, I want to be with my family on Sunday morning. It's such a special time to be together on Sunday morning. Yes, it's true. But the reality is that I really need to have my own space and to also go dance. And first I was feeling guilty, but then I realized that my kids and my husband were like, go dance, please. Because they knew I would come back transformed. I would come back happy and I would come back fed and nourished. So that was a big lesson too, was like, oh my God, if I don't take care of myself and if I don't put myself first, who will? Nobody. And so if I want to quit complaining, I need to go dance. I need to go hug some trees. I need to, see my friends. I need to rest. I need to be in silence. All of this are priority.
Absolutely. I think that's such good reminders. And Christine, my last question for you kind of, around really all of this and life in general is the name of this podcast is Tranquility du Jour. So I'm curious, how are you finding tranquility in your everyday right now? And are you still kind of focusing on this no complaining?
So I'm not focusing on not complaining because it became my new nature. That's what's happening when you do 21 consecutive days. You really rewire your brain and you create a new nature where it doesn't make much sense anymore for me to complain. Like my system is not going on that ramp again, like the freeway went, because I know that all the other routes are way better for me. I know it like at the core of my being. What I've been doing lately that has been very, very blissful and very, very nice is that I take the time every morning. As soon as I get out of my bed, I go on my yoga mat and I either do a regular flow yoga practice or I do a Kundalini. I've discovered Kundalini Yoga recently and I'm in love with it. And it's really well allowed me to stay grounded. We went through a lot in the last year and it was a lot of drama, a lot of fear. Yeah. So I say that my yoga mat kept me sane in the last year. Really, really, really. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. And say the name of your book in French.
So it's J'arrête de râler.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Yeah. And listeners, I'll have a link, of course, to the book and the show notes. And thank you so much for being here, Christine.
Thank you, Kimberly.
So in the show notes, you can find links to our guest, her Instagram, Facebook, and website. Also, a link to our TDJ Insiders Facebook group where I share resources. You can find inspiration and make connections. Also, be part of the online book club. And this month, we are reading The Art of Gathering. There's also a link to sign up for a 30-day trial of Audible and get your first book free. A link to sign up to receive weekly inbox love through Love Notes, which is invites, inspiration, and more. A link to my 6 books and planner, ways to follow Tranquility du Jour, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And then also a link to TDJ by Kimberly, which is my locally sewn eco-friendly fashion line. So thank you, as always, for tuning in. I love, love, love being with you, and I wish you a delicious, delightful week ahead. Sans complaining.